Alright, welcome to the CAD tutorial. So you should be using Onshape for this. It just makes it easier. You'll be able to follow along. And I think it's a great platform to start learning on. This is the first thing you're going to see. This is like your dashboard. If you scroll down, these are all the documents that you've made. As you can see, I have a lot. There's recently opened here in the tree, created by me, shared with me, teams, blah, blah, blah. This is useful for like robotics, or if you're actually working with other people and using Onshape as a cloud-based software. And then there's public, which you can actually see all the documents that people have made if they left them public. So, I don't know, it's probably like a fish tank or something. There's a Axiom Beta, glasses, gears, irons, race cars, and you can click on these and go in them and create your own copies and stuff. So that's pretty cool. Let's go back to my Onshape, and we're gonna hit this big blue button, create, to create our first part. So we'll create a document. We'll call it CAD tutorial. All right, and this is what you're gonna see when you open it up for the first time. It's going to be a blank. This is a workspace, this big blank white area here with the 3 planes. Here's your view cube. These are a bunch of tools that you have up here in the bar. And then this is your feature tree. So first you need to get familiar with moving everything around. So left click isn't going to do anything but highlight. It doesn't matter which way you go. Right click, you get a few options: zoom to fit, isometric, which that just changes the view. You can right click and drag to rotate your view around. You can kind of see how the 3D is moving. You can middle click and drag to pan your workspace. And you can also use the view cube to select specific views. So let's say I want to look at the left. I want to look at the top. I want to look at the right. You can also click on this, isometric. So yeah, now let's actually start a part. We're going to make a 2-inch cube. So the first thing you want to do whenever you're creating anything in Onshape, at least in a part studio, is select sketch. You always need to start with a sketch, because how can you have 3D without 2D? So we'll click sketch, and we'll pick a plane. So a plane is kind of like a piece of paper you're going to draw on to later make it 3D. And you'll see what I mean later. So let's just click on front plane. See how it's highlighted? And we'll right click and say view normal to sketch plane. And it makes our view normal to the sketch plane. I just clicked F to fit it to the screen. As you can see, if I zoom out, move this over, click F, goes right to the screen. Fits right in there. So we're making a cube, right? Well, if we're drawing a cube in 2D, we'll start with a rectangle. So click on your rectangle tool, click on the origin and release, and then move your mouse and click and release. We have a square here, but as you can see, the dimensions aren't really the same. So we're going to need to dimension the side. We'll click D, or you can click up here for dimension. And then we'll click and release, move our mouse, click and release, and we'll say 2, enter. Same thing for this side, 2, enter. And you don't need to do it for all the sides, because the computer automatically assumes that each side is at 90 degrees and these are horizontal. So there's our square. Everything's black. I don't know if you noticed, hit escape to escape the dimension tool. If I delete this dimension, this side turns blue because it's not defined. I can drag this in and out. I cannot drag this one because that one is defined as 2 inches. So if it's black, it's defined. If it's blue, it's undefined. 2 inches. All right, hit check. Here's our first sketch. It's still 2D. It's just a square. And here's where the magic part of CAD happens. we're going to hit this tool up here, extrude. Well, what do we want to extrude? This square. See how it turns dark? That's because all of a sudden we gave it thickness. Before, it was just a square. It was just 0. We can say 0.1 inches. Very thin. We can say 10 inches. Very thick. So you can kind of see what the extrude does. And you can visualize it with this arrow too. You get super thin, go the other way. We want our cube to be 2 inches. Hit check. And there's our cube. 2-inch solid cube. Voila. Not too hard, right? Alright. Now we're going to... So, yeah, I forgot to say this. These tabs down here, these are actually another feature of Onshape. So in a document, we're in CAD tutorial right now. Oops. We actually have different tabs. So this just happens to be a part studio. So we can rename this cube. Okay, and let's say we want to make a cube with a hole this time. You don't have to create a new part studio. We want to put a hole in this cube right here, right on top. So what do? What's the first thing you do when creating a 3D part? Start another sketch. There you go. And where did we want to start it? Right on this face. So we're going to select this sketch plane. That face is going to be where we're drawing. So we'll take our circle now because it's a hole. But it's not in the middle. So let me hit escape. What if I want this circle to be in the middle? Well, there's a lot of ways you can do this, but the simplest way is this. We'll dimension the center to this edge here, and half of 2 is 1. And then to this edge here, half of 2 is 1. Okay, that middle point's defined, but what about this outer circle? Oh, we didn't give it a size. So hit dimension again, and we'll dimension this hole. We'll just say 1 inch. It makes it easy. And boom, everything's defined. Now, we'll hit check, or you don't have to hit check. You can just go straight to your extrude tool, but that's not a hole. Well, we have different options up here. We want to remove material. See how it doesn't go all the way through? Well, that's because this blind hole is only to 1 inch deep. So there's a lot of ways to make this go all the way through. We can go 2 inches deep, which it does go through. You can go over, which it does go through. Or we can just select this drop down and hit through all. That way, however thick this part ends up being, it'll always have a hole through the entire thing. No matter if our part is 5 inches, half an inch, goes all the way through, you don't have to mess with the dimension or the length that you extruded the hole at all. We'll hit check, and boom, our cube has a hole in it. All right, now let's learn another feature. So we'll create a new part studio, and we're gonna call this cone. All right, so you guys just used the extrude feature. Now let's use the revolve feature. This one's a little bit trickier to wrap your head around, but once you got it, it's actually not too hard. So, like I said, first thing you do, start with a sketch. And we're going to click front plane again. View normal to sketch plane. Hit the screen. Okay, so this time we're going to make a cone, right? Well, let me show you what we're going to do. Let's draw half of a cone. This is like if you're looking at the cone from the side. You can probably see that it would be more like this, right? Your cone would look more like this if these were even. But that's not really how you want to use the revolve tool. So let's get rid of these. And let me show you what I mean. Let's dimension this 2 inches high. Give it a 1 inch radius. Everything's defined. Click revolve now. And this is going to help you really visualize. I'm just making this 3D so you can see. We want to revolve this face that we just drew around the center axis, and all of a sudden it sweeps our face all the way around and creates a 3D object. So that's pretty cool, isn't it? Let's try that again. If we wanted to revolve the other way around this axis, it'd make a really tall cone. Or we could probably revolve around this one too. Makes a weird shape. I don't even know what that is. But we want to revolve around this center axis to make the cone. And just like I said, if we check this front view, it's just like looking at a cone from the side. That's exactly what we started with, and we revolved it. So there's our cone. All right, and that wasn't too hard, was it? No, it wasn't. All right, now let's say we wanted this to be a really light cone. This is a solid cone right now. There is actually a tool you can use called shell up here. Let's click shell. See, it creates a thin walled part by removing one or more faces. Yeah, we want to remove a lot of our material. So let's remove this bottom. You can see it kind of leaves a really thin wall. You can kind of see how thick that is. And let's say that's still too thick. I really want it to be thinner. So we can write, let's say we want 1/16 of an inch thick. That's still too thick. We want 1/32. 1/32. Yeah, that's probably good. The shell thickness is good. Click check, and all of a sudden, our cone is basically hollow. This is just like a paper cup or an ice cream cone. So we could have revolved a very thin profile, but sometimes it's just faster to shell apart, especially if you just want to make a concept or something. It's pretty easy. All right, so there's your revolve feature and your shell feature. Let's create a new part. We'll call this one sweep, and you'll see why. All right, first thing, create a sketch. We're gonna make kind of a gummy worm shape, if you will. Not too hard. So you'll see what I mean in a sec. We're gonna make basically a curvy pipe, and it's gonna follow this shape right here. We're gonna make a tube follow this shape. So right in the middle there. All right, so these are my lines. Where is that? Sketch fillet. This basically just gives you a radius on there. You click the points that you want a radius, double click this number. 1/2 inch radius is good. We'll dimension each of these lines. 2 inches, 1 inch, 2 inches. And you can probably see that this really isn't 1 inch tall. It's going to be 2 inches tall because we have 2 1/2 inch radiuses and a 1 inch length. And if you over define a sketch, it's going to turn gray because it's over defined. We have too many dimensions fighting each other. So we can really just delete that. All right, here's our sketch profile, right? Well, if we want a tube, this isn't a tube, this is just a line. We can zoom in on it infinitely and it's never going to get bigger. So the first thing we want to do is start another sketch on the end right here where that starts. So we're going to click right plane. And let me hide the top and the front. So this is where we're sketching, and you'll see why I'm doing this in a sec. We want this to be a tube, right? You can kind of see where this is going. 1/2 inch. Yep, that's right on the middle, right on that line. So we'll finish this sketch. So our tube is then going to be half an inch in diameter. Oops. Now we'll click sweep, solid. What do we want to sweep? This circle. And what's the path we want it to go on? This path right here. Yep, there you go. And you can see that circle that we sketched is now following our sketch path, which is exactly what we wanted. Well, let's say we don't want a circular tube anymore. We'll go back, edit this sketch, delete that. Let's say we wanted a square. Well, let's do this. We want this to be 5 inches. Oh, that's not right. It should be 1 inch. Wait, no. I'm messing myself up. I forgot to dimension the actual square. So let's call this 1 inch. 1 inch, everything's defined. Boom. Now our sweep has an error because we did just delete half of what it was working with. So this is the profile that we want to sweep now. There's a square tube. All right, that seems pretty easy. Let's say, yeah, that's cool, but I want it to be symmetrical, and it's not symmetrical. There's actually a feature called mirror right here, and I'm sure you can guess what it does. It mirrors anything you have about a plane that you pick. So what do we want to mirror? This part we just made. Across what plane? Well, that'd be pretty symmetrical. Or we can show these planes again. Let's say I didn't want to mirror it that way. I wanted to mirror it about this plane. Okay, that's also symmetrical. Well, what if I wanted to mirror it across this plane? You could also do that. What you can't do is mirror it across a radius. See, it won't even let me pick that. You can mirror it across this. Any flat plane, you can mirror it across. It doesn't have to be one of these blue ones. It can be any flat plane that we have on here. So let's just mirror it about this plane. All right, there you go. There's a sweep feature. It saves you a lot of sketching time if you do it quickly. Next one, we'll do an assembly. So first we're going to need to create some parts. We're going to do a pin and a block. So rename. Let's start with the pin. Sketch. This time I'm going to pick top. Doesn't really matter what you pick. So let's do a pin. Dimension this to 1 inch. Extrude it. Let's just extrude it 2 inches. That's good. All right, there's our pin. Easy enough. Our block. Sketch. Top plane. Okay. This time we'll make a rectangle, so we'll call this 2 inches by 4 inches. And instead of starting a whole new sketch, we can just put the hole in here. Dimension this from the bottom, 1 inch. This should be 2 inches. And we'll call this a 1 inch hole because our pin is 1 inch in diameter. When we extrude, it's not, oh, it did know what to do. It's not going to extrude that circle unless you click on it and tell it to. So that might save you a little bit of time in the future. There we go. There's our block. Oh, here's a good idea. Let's say this block is going to be used with kindergartners, and kindergartners get hurt really easily, right? Well, we don't want these sharp edges, so we're going to fill it. the edges. And what a fillet is when you click on an edge, it rounds it. Yeah, but this is not really a block anymore. Those radiuses are too big. We'll go 1/8 of an inch. You can see it kind of rounds all your corners. And one thing you can do is click each edge individually or just highlight your whole part and it will round every single edge that there is. And you can change these still. Do 5.5. It's going to end up being, yeah, that's not a great block. That's kind of an oval pillow. So we'll just go 1/8 again. That should be good. Oh, I don't want these holes to be filleted, so we'll unselect those. Instead of a fillet on my hole, I want a chamfer. So instead of a rounded kind of edge remover, it's going to be a flat one. And this is going to help my pin slide in pretty easily. And this is actually not hard to make in real life. A fillet is a little bit harder, especially on a machine. Like if you're making these on a machine and this block is out of metal, that's going to be way easier to make a chamfer than if you were making a fillet. And these don't really have to be big at all. We'll just make those small. So 1/16. All right, boom. There's our block. Kindergarten proof with chamfers so our pin slides in nicely. So now let's go to our assembly. We want to put this pin and block together. Well, our workspace is blank. It doesn't know what we want in here, so we have to tell it. We want to insert our block, so we'll click that. You don't have to drag it. Click in space to place it down. Pin, same thing. Boom. Now, these are kind of floating. You can just drag them around, as you can see. The first thing we want to do when you're creating an assembly is to fix one of your parts down. So drag it to where you want. We'll just say there. I'm going to right click on this part and say fix. You can see right here it got this little symbol, part is fixed. Now I can't drag it around. It's not going to move anywhere. Alright, now let's say you want to put this pin in the hole. You can't really drag it because you won't get it exact ever. Like that seems pretty close, but I want this side to be flat. Now we just moved off. You see, that's too much hassle. So what we're going to do is create a, we'll just do a fasten mate. So this mate, all right, what mates are is basically what they sound like. They mate parts to each other in different ways. You could fasten them. You could have them spin. They could slide. Two planes could be mated to each other, so you could also slide and rotate the part. There's cylindrical mate, pin and slot, ball mate, parallel mate. Sounds exactly like what it does. It keeps things parallel. So you're not going to use a whole lot of these, especially for this pin and block. This is pretty easy with a fasten mate, and I'll show you why. Let's click fasten. All right, mate connectors. When you hover over a part, you're going to see all these dots, and they kind of appear wherever your mouse is and on these planes and stuff. They're going to appear on planes, edges, vertexes, anywhere where it can really, like, the software can choose a good starting point, let's say. So let's rotate to the bottom here. And on this pin, I want the center of this face. So we'll click that. I want that to be mated to the center of this block. But every time I try to drag, it disappears and goes onto my pin. One way you can keep these little mate connectors up is by holding shift. You can see I'm dragging and it's only going to stay on the plane that I started holding shift on. So if I start holding shift on this one and want to go down to my plane down here, That's not going to work. It's only going to stay on this plane. But if I hover over this one, hold shift, I can pick any mate connector on this plane, no matter where my mouse is. So we'll pick this center here. And boom, fasten right to it. These two mate connectors are literally on top of each other. That's exactly where I wanted my pin. Still kindergarten proof. And voila. And get rid of that. My pin's not going anywhere. I'm trying to drag it. My block's not going anywhere. I'm trying to drag it. No spin, no movement, no nothing. So that's our first assembly. Kindergarten proof pin and block. Now let's say, oh no, these kindergartners are getting cut on this edge right here. What do we do? Well, lucky you can right click on this part and edit the part in context. What does that mean? We're really just editing our pin, but you can see where it is in the assembly. And this gets really useful when you get bigger and bigger assemblies and start getting parts that depend on each other. But for now, this just prevents us from going back to our pin and choosing the wrong side. We can see exactly where the part is. We can see exactly which edge we want to chamfer. We'll chamfer this one. And I want a bigger radius, so we'll go 1/8 of an inch. Voila. There's our chamfer, not radius. Well, the kindergartners need somewhere to put their crayons. So, start a new sketch. View normal to the sketch plane. Now they can hide their crayons inside this pin when we create a hole for them. What do? Remove. Doesn't go all the way through all. Boom. Crayon storage. Let's go back to our assembly. And it's exactly what we did to it in the part studio. So we stopped editing in context. We're back in our assembly. And there you go. So here's our kindergarten proof block and pin. So you guys literally just went from a cube to a cube with a hole. You learn how to revolve a cone. And you can do this with any shape. It doesn't have to be just a triangle. Try it yourself. You learned how to sweep stuff. You learned how to make a pin, which is not too hard. Block. We learned chamfers, fillets, making holes, and then assembly. So keep practicing all these tools. Be creative. Try and break the software because you might learn things that you never thought of. And like always, Onshape has tutorials if you need more help. But yeah, good job, and stay tuned for part 2.